Well, I want to be courteous of your time, and we wanted to start as close to 11 as we could, but I knew that we'd have some people kind of popping in a little bit later. So we're going to go ahead and get started. If anyone has registered for the webinar today, they will receive a link to both the webinar itself and to the evaluation. I do ask that you take the maybe 2 to 3 minutes that it will take to complete the evaluation at the end. When you get that email, I think that email is going to actually go out next Monday. It's not going to go out before that because of the holiday. So you will get an email probably Monday or Tuesday of next week with the recording, with attachments for what we're talking about today, as well as the survey link. So if you can just take the time to do that when you get that email next week, that would be really great. I am going to ask that you please put your name and organization in the chat box as you enter the room. That way we can use that for attendance. And for those of you who have already been on a little while, I apologize that you've heard that a couple times already, but just making sure that it happens. And I am also going to welcome Dwayne Hunter with us. He's one of my staff, and he's helping me with attendance. And just because sometimes crazy things happen, I'm going to go ahead and make Dwayne my co-host today. That will allow him the opportunity to keep things rolling if for some reason I get booted off of here. So I'm going to make him my co-host, just in case of technical difficulties. Otherwise, I don't really have a co-host today, so I am super multitasking. I am going to be running my PowerPoint, trying my best to watch the chat, and do all of the other little bit of stuff. So yeah, I see Courtney and Dan Edwards. Dan actually is a personal family friend of ours, and his wife is currently in school to be a psychiatrist and doing great things. And they are on vacation in Florida going to Disney World later today. How crazy is that? I appreciate them being here. I would not be, I'm just being real. I would be like, I am in Florida and there is sun and there is water and I am not inside. So I thank them, just a shout out to them. Thank them for being here. All right, let's get this ball rolling. I am going to share my screen. Hopefully this is all going to work. And we're going to get started. I'm going to start a little bit just kind of by talking about some of the statistics that I've seen around the emotional health of our adolescents as it relates to COVID. So the first few slides are just kind of some data information that I wanted to kind of get the ball rolling with. It kind of gives us the why are we even having this conversation. And I also just wanted to share that I had the opportunity over the last few weeks to attend the IYI Kids Count Conference here in Indiana. And while it is very an Indiana driven conference, for those of you who are from outside the state of Indiana, it is one of the best conferences I've attended, even nationally. Tons of breakout sessions with really relevant information for any frontline staff working with youth. So that's Indiana Youth Institute Kids Count Conference, and they have amazing professional development opportunities, webinars, stuff on their website. So you might want to check them out at iyyi.org. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I had the opportunity while I was at that conference to hear Dr. Lori DeSaltis talk about social emotional learning and the emotional state of some of our youth. She's kind of the guru about those things. She's written a half a dozen books, I think. And it was really interesting to hear her chat about what social and emotional learning, that phrase has been reduced to, and whether it's effective or not. And I'm going to kind of weave some of what she had to say into the presentation that I'm going to do today, because I also heard her a week later at the Indiana School Counselors Conference. She was the keynote speaker, and she said some of the same things, and it just kind of hit home, and kind of dovetails really well with some of what we're going to be talking about today. So I will preface our conversation today by just saying that this presentation was originally prepared for a live audience. The Tobacco Education and Prevention Coalition of Lake and Porter County and I did a youth wellness forum in September, and it was a breakout session there. And so some of you know were registered for that breakout session. We decided to forego that session and really focus on some other things that were happening that day. So that's how this came to be. So it's going to be a little tricky. A couple places had some interactive demonstrations and moments that might get a little tricky to do via Zoom, but we're going to work through it, and I appreciate your cooperation as we navigate those areas. So all of that being said, let's go ahead and get started and look at some of the data. This is information that was acquired in 2020. 9% of high schoolers overall have attempted suicide. And to me, that just boggles my mind. Even 9%, which seems like a fairly low number, but I think 1% is too high, right? If we think about 9% of all high schoolers, if you're in a class of 30 people, 9% of that, you're looking at, you know, three kids sitting in that classroom, and most of us go into classrooms and do programming. So if you're sitting in a classroom, there are 3 students sitting in that classroom, most likely have attempted suicide. That's not thought about, that's not, you know, contemplated, that is actually have attempted suicide. LGBT community at greater risk overall, students in particular, adolescent age, we're finding that that is an area that's really struggling. Some of that is just because of the overwhelming, you know, the changes that are happening and the decisions that they're trying to make. But then cyberbullying and shaming get stuck into that, stigmatism around those things at that community. Students, our adolescents, really are still trying to navigate who they are and how they're feeling. And as we're going to talk about later today, they don't often have, first of all, a trusted adult or someone that, or support that they can have those conversations with. And then beyond that, we have the cyberbullying, the emotional literacy isn't there to have the conversations. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. 6% of heterosexual high school students of all races and ethnicities are at risk, whereas 23% for the gay, lesbian, and bisexual students. So you can see that it's considerably higher. And then one of the things that we have to realize is that our communities that we're serving are really under-resourced. Right now, locally, if you were to make a call to some of our local resource centers, psychiatric care, treatment facilities, to try to help these adolescents that are dealing with stress and anxiety, who may be having suicidal ideations, unless it's an emergency situation and they're going to get admitted for a 24, 48, 72 hour in hospital care, you're probably looking anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks to as much as 3 months of a wait to get in to get some kind of counseling support and help. I know one case that we've been working pretty closely with, when they made their initial call, this mom made their initial call with a child who was acting out, had some anger issues, and she was really concerned about his overall mental health. It was a 3-month wait to get in to see someone. You know, a lot can happen in 3 months. These kids need our help, and the support that they need just hasn't been there. 17% of all backgrounds live in poverty. So not only is just the timing of getting these kids the help they need an issue, but is it, if they have insurance, is it covered by insurance? Can they afford the support and the medical attention that they really need to work through these things? So again, 17% of all backgrounds live in poverty, 32% for African Americans, and 31% for American Indians. 27% of all backgrounds have children have parents lacking secure employment. So you've got these kids who are really insecure. They don't know what's going to happen. And, you know, while parents may do their best to have conversations, not in front of their children, children have a way of knowing when there's stress in the home and when things aren't there. And, you know, when things, you know, are, where are their meals coming from? Do they have the clothes that they need? Do they have the school supplies that they need? So all of these things play into the problem that we have. And then as I was doing some research, I found this quote from the US Surgeon General, and it says this: the COVID-19 pandemic further altered their experiences at home, school, and in the community, and the effect on their mental health has been devastating. The future well-being of our country depends on how we support and invest in the next generation. So we know that COVID left kids, in many cases, without parent supervision. We had kids who were, you know, at home trying to do their schoolwork. They weren't getting the socialization experience that they normally do. I know our primary work is with middle schoolers, and while we were able to pivot fairly quickly to bring our programming to the Zoom platform like we are today, overall these kids still were very isolated, and a lot of consequences came from that. Some of the ramifications were just learning, and I think are going to be felt for quite a while. As I was speaking with some of our school counselors, they anticipate that the results of COVID and our students being homeschooled or using electronic platforms of various nature, whether it be Zoom or Google Classroom, are quite a bit behind. 2 to 3 years in their socialization skills, 1 year or more in their academic skills. And they're suggesting, you know, some of the data that I read and in talking with our school support staff, they're anticipating it's going to take 5 years to get our schools back to what we would consider normal. So, you know, what does that really look like for our students and for their families, and then for the communities? I know for us, we have some programming in 9th and 10th grade. And you think about the fact that during COVID, for basically 2 years of their education, so for 7th and 8th grade, they did what we're doing today. They did all of their learning staring at these screens. Their socialization, for the most part, also staring at screens, whether it be Snapchat or TikTok or Instagram or old school Facebook. That's how they were communicating with their peers, even texting, because very rarely do they actually use their phones to make a phone call, right? So their skill level, their maturity level, their emotional well-being, their socialization, all of that was really delayed. And we have to take all of that into consideration as we're dealing with the students in the classroom today. So we're going to take a look at before and after COVID. 1 in 5 children in the United States are between the ages of 3 and 17. Now, for the work that we do here at PATH, as I said, most of our work is done with 5th grade through 12th grade. So we're looking more at 11 to 17, 18-year-olds. But it's really hard to find data just specific to that age bracket. So some of the information I'm going to be sharing with you today may include elementary students, and I'll do the best I can to kind of distinguish which is which. So between 2009 and 2019, 1 in 3 high schoolers reported persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. Post-COVID, so results of the surveys happening in 2021, there was a 40% increase in the number of students reporting those persistent feelings of sadness or hopelessness. So that's quite an increase, right? And like I said, a lot has changed and we need to be very mindful of that. We need to be mindful of it in the way we're dealing with our students in the classroom, the way we're dealing with students if we have opportunity for one-on-one conversations, maybe in a mentoring environment. And even for those of us that are parents or grandparents or aunts or cousins, to be able to come in and support these kids is necessary and needed more than it ever has been before. So suicidal behaviors among high school students have increased 19%, so that we're now looking at 1 in 5 children between the ages of 3 and 17 that are having suicidal ideations. 16% having actually made a plan in a prior year, which is a 44% increase from the data prior to COVID. So we're looking at just an extreme amount of need, and there's data over and over and over again that really supports that. So the early reports for 2020 show that their increase in suicide rates of almost 50% nationally. 6,600 suicide deaths by teens between the ages of 10 and 24 in the United States in 2020. And I'll just say, for those of you who have maybe taken the ASSIST or QPR training, you know, I've done that training here, and many of you have had that training in other ways. That's just the tip of the iceberg, right? We know that there's a lot of other things that happen. Not always are deaths by suicide recognized as suicide. It really depends on what's found at the scene, whether there's been a note left. There's a lot that goes into that, and the coroner makes the final call on that cause of death, unless there's an autopsy done to further distinguish that. And these are just kind of, like I said, the fully official numbers are really anticipated to be higher than that. But over 6,000 deaths, and some of the information that I read really seemed to think that it's probably closer to 8,000 when all the official numbers are come in, because of, again, the underreporting that happens. Keep this going. So 2021 National Emergency Child and Adolescent Mental Health. These are the recommendations that were made by the CDC and mental health professionals. And they're recommending that we recognize that mental health is an essential part of overall health. And we're going to get into that here in just a few minutes. What does whole person health look like, and how can you teach that to your students? We need to empower youth and their families to recognize, manage, and learn from their emotions. So emotional literacy, that's going to be the second part of what we talk about today. Ensure that every child has access to high quality, affordable, and culturally competent mental health care. That's a really big recommendation, right? Where are the money, the resources, and everything else going to come from? Because what we know is even the number of students coming out of college, graduating with those professionals, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words. Those professional degrees, those numbers continue to dwindle, even though the need becomes greater and greater. There's literally a shortage. Many of our professionals in those areas of specialty are aging out. They're retiring, and there's just not enough new graduates and people entering those professions to fill the gap. So the need there is so much more than just financial or availability to transportation or availability to the resources. It's really that there's not people to fill those spots. So there's an emerging need for students and graduates in those fields. Address the economic and social barriers that contribute to poor mental health for young people, families, and caregivers. Increase timely data collection and research to identify and respond to youth mental health needs more rapidly. Like I said, many of the databases and resources that I was able to find are still looking at 2019, 2020 numbers. 2020, many of them are preliminary numbers. And a lot of that is because of COVID. People who were out in the field doing that evaluation, gathering the information, we're doing just what we're doing today, working from home, sitting at a computer, getting in front of people to ask questions, to do focus groups was next to impossible. So we were relying on sending emails, and gathering information through online surveys, which is just not the best way to do things, not best practice for sure. So the COVID-19 impact is multifaceted, right? And we've got an increase in anxiety, an increase in depression, in loneliness, in stress, in tensions. You all have probably felt it. We've all been impacted, but what they're saying to us now and what the research is really showing is that this adolescent age bracket was impacted the most and will have the longest time to bring back into a state of normalcy because there was so much missed. And for those of you who have been around for a while, been part of our lunch tables, we've had guest speakers talk about mental health. We've had guest speakers talk about adolescent brain development and how that prefrontal cortex is just starting to form during these adolescent years. They're learning how to process. They're learning what their emotions look like. They're learning how to think more thoroughly, balancing pros and cons, making better judgment. A lot of the skills and opportunities to learn those things were missed because of COVID and the isolation that our youth were under. So we have a very, as I've said a couple of times already, we have a very immature audience that we're speaking to in today's classrooms. And teachers are seeing it, social workers are seeing it, parents are seeing it. The question really becomes, what do we do about it, and how do we have conversations to move it forward? And hopefully we'll have a little bit of that conversation today. So we're going to go ahead and get into the whole person health. This is a lesson that we use in our positive potential curriculum, which is an evidence-based curriculum for middle school students, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. It's a live demo. I was all prepared to do it with those at the conference in September. But what I'm going to do today is share with you a video that we created, that we shared with our students during COVID, as our way of being able to stay in touch and do our program facilitation. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen and I'm going to pull up that video and share it with you. So let's just pray the technology works for me. Hang on just a second. We're going to stop sharing that and I'm going to share something different. And hopefully we're going to go full. Nope. Sorry, guys. I need to go full screen. That's this one. And here we go. Sorry, guys, I'm told that you can't see my screen, so I'm going to try this again. Hang on just a second. I swear I did this earlier and it worked, so. Hmm. Can you see the video? Yes. Okay, let's see what happens. Can you hear it? Can you see it?
Can't hear it and it's buffering, going slow. The same result.
Hmm. Any better?
Negative, same result.
Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome, hon.
Okay. Well, it's great when technology works, right? All right, give me 1 second, guys. I'm gonna go grab tech help. I have it on a flash drive. Should I play it from the flash drive maybe? Would that make a difference? Sorry, y'all. Try again. Any better?
Hi, everybody. We want to welcome you to
It's
our
functional.
Positive
Good.
Potential e-learning platform program.
Perfect, thank
This
you.
program is called Be the Exception, and we're going to be talking about a lot of different things over the next couple of lessons. My name is Jason, and this is Jasmine.
Hi, everybody.
And we're excited that you're tuning in and you're going to be a part of this program. Now, one of the things that we like to talk about whenever we go through information like this is we like to relate it to your life, to your future, to maybe some goals that you have. Maybe you know what you want to do with your life. Maybe you don't know what you want to do with your life, but you have a lot of time to figure it out. And we want to help you navigate some of those things that you might be faced with now or in the very near future. We're going to start off by talking about something that's known as the 5 parts of the whole person.
Also known as the whole person health theory.
And you might be wondering, what exactly are the 5 parts of the whole person? We're glad you asked. We're going to go through talking about what each one is, what it means, we're going to define it, and then also how it relates to your life.
First, we're going to start with the physical part.
The physical part matures automatically all on its own. Your body is programmed to mature, grow, and develop with little effort from you. Signs of physical maturity include maximum growth, like your shoe size or how tall you are, and your ability to reproduce. Physical maturity varies from person to person. Your body's time clock determines when you will reach physical maturity.
Next, we have the social part.
The social part is your relationships with other people. Signs of social maturity include getting along with others, building relationships with friends and family, developing respect for one another, building open and honest relationships based on trust, respect, honesty, and standing up to negative pressure. Each year of your life with effort, through experiences and influences, you will mature socially.
And then we move on to the next one, which is going to be the spiritual part.
The spiritual part includes your beliefs, standards, morals, and values. It asks questions such as, why am I here? Who am I as a person? What is my purpose? What happens when I die? How you answer these questions determines the standards by which you choose to live. If you do not even consider these questions, you'll live by the standards of others. Signs of spiritual maturity include living by your personal beliefs and standards, actively engaging in activities you believe to be healthy, and avoiding behaviors that are unhealthy. Each year of your life with effort, you can develop spiritual maturity through a variety of experiences and social influences.
And the fourth part is going to be the mental part.
The mental part is your ability to learn, think, make decisions, and set goals. Signs of mental maturity include thinking before you act and making choices that are good for you now and in the future. Each year of your life with effort, you can mature mentally through a variety of experiences and influences.
And last but not least, we have the emotional part.
The emotional part is your attitude, feelings, and emotions, both the ups and downs. Some examples include happy or depressed, excited or bored, and calm or angry. Feelings can be like a roller coaster for teens. Signs of emotional maturity include recognizing and understanding your emotions and learning to control your emotions rather than letting them control you. Each year of your life, you will mature emotionally through experiences and influences.
Now, when we talk about being healthy, which one of these 5 parts would you say we focus on the most?
We usually talk about the physical part.
Right. We usually talk about eating right, exercising, working out. Most of us attribute those types of things to how does it affect our overall physical body. But the thing you have to realize is there's a whole lot more to you than just a physical body. And you want to be healthy in all 5 of these areas. One of the healthiest things that you can do is really think about your choices. Think about the consequences to the decisions that you're making. If you think about it, every choice, every decision that we make in life is going to positively or negatively affect one or more of the 5 parts. Here's a really great example. Let's say that you're at school and you come to school and you end up getting into a fight with somebody. Now, because you got into a fight with somebody, that results in you getting kicked out of school. If you think about that one choice, that one decision to get into a fight with somebody, well, how would that choice now affect, in a negative way, those 5 parts of the whole person? So think about those 5 parts. How would it affect the physical, for instance?
Maybe you got physically injured in that fight.
Yeah, it's possible. Maybe you got a black eye. Maybe your physical body is now injured because of that decision to get into a fight. So that would definitely affect the physical part. It's a possibility. What about the emotional part?
Maybe you're mad at the person for getting into that fight.
You could still be upset with them, but it's also possible maybe your parents are upset with you because you got kicked out of school. You might, again, be angry with that person, but also your parents are upset with you, so that's creating some other emotions that you may be experiencing. So we definitely know it would affect the physical, the emotional. What about the social?
Maybe you would lose some friends, or people consider you as a bully.
Yeah, definitely place some strain on your relationships. If your parents are upset with you, is there going to be some tension between you and your parents in that relationship now? Absolutely. What about the mental part? How would it affect that part?
Maybe you're struggling with your decisions to do that fight.
Yeah. So now maybe you're questioning your choice. Why did I get into a fight? Why did I make that decision? Absolutely. And then finally, the spiritual part. If you think about the spiritual part, that represents, as we said, your morals and your values. So how could those be affected?
Maybe fighting goes against your morals or your values and your beliefs.
And it's possible that maybe now you're even questioning your own value and your self-worth. So you can see that one choice, one decision to get into a fight with somebody has now had a negative effect on all 5 parts of the whole person. One of the things that we want for you is we want you to be healthy in all 5 of these things. One of the healthiest things you can do is avoid negative things that will have an impact on the 5 parts and be involved in some of those positive activities that are going to help you grow in each one of those areas. And one of the things that you can choose to do is avoid things that we know will negatively affect the 5 parts of the whole person. Things like drugs, alcohol, unhealthy relationship, peer pressure, bullying. Those types of things we know are going to have a negative effect on the 5 parts, as well as they may actually affect how you view yourself, maybe the way you think about yourself, and also the value that you place on yourself.
All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint here and catch up where we are. So that is just one of the lessons that we do in the school. And generally when we're in the classroom and not having to use the online platform, we have 5 different students read the different parts of the whole person. And then we have different scenarios that they can work through. Like, what if this is a decision that you make? What consequences might that have? So I'd really like to take just a minute and get the feedback from some of you all on that lesson and how you think that might help start the conversation about emotional maturity and whole person maturity. How might that kind of a lesson help the students that you work with? What is your takeaway from that conversation? Just go ahead and unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you'd prefer. How might that have an influence?
Hey, Donna, can you hear me?
Yeah.
This is Dwayne.
Hi, Dwayne.
I would say that it helps them kind of gauge where they are and realize that they may not be, or that they need to grow in some areas that they might not have paid attention to. Because some of the aspects are things, like you said, mostly physical, but to realize, okay, I need to grow in some of my mental maturity, or I need to focus more on my spiritual maturity, or even circle back around to some things that you may not be so aware that you lost track of and need to revisit.
Do you think that, not just you, Dwayne, but anybody, do you think that this kind of conversation in a classroom with students or in an after-school program, something like that, would be useful? Can you see how it would be helpful?
I like that idea on how to start and open up the conversation on, like, what is your spiritual self and spiritual body? I think that's a good way to open that up.
Anybody else have any feedback? Yeah, so I see Emily saying that many of the teens that she speaks with don't recognize the connection, right, between a choice that you make and all these different parts of who they are. I think as we're talking, especially with youngsters, do they even realize that all of these parts exist? You know, have they ever been introduced to the idea? Have they ever had the conversation? And I think it just is a good way to really open it up. And we start each of our sessions with the students, well, not each session. We open day 1 of each of our programs in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with this lesson. For the 7th and 8th graders who may have had us in 6th grade, it's a reminder that we're talking today about something much bigger than just who we are physically, because, you know, regardless of the topic that we come in, whether we're talking about bullying or drugs and alcohol or unhealthy relationships, their first thought takes it to the physical place. What does this do to me physically? And they, I think, also kind of have the assumption that that's all we're going to talk about. So really being able to remind them that they are more than just physical beings, that they have all of these things inside of them, I think really gives them a better place to come from and a better way to have conversations and consider their behaviors and their actions and how they relate to all of these different things. And when we talk about the social, you know, social for who we are, our own reputation, our own circle, you know, who they think are their best friends or people they hang with or the people that they game with online, maybe, you know, for them that's social. But what they don't often realize is the ripple effect, and that, you know, as Jason was saying in that video, what does it do to your relationship within your family, with your parent or trusted adult, with your siblings? And then beyond that, what happened in the school environment? Look at the much larger picture and help these students to understand that they're not islands unto themselves, right? And sometimes this is the first time that that idea is introduced to them, that the things that they do, the choices that they make in the moment sometimes has a much bigger effect, not just on them and their circle, but that ripple effect on how it can, if we go back even to what the Surgeon General said in that warning, what has happened through COVID and the fragile place that our youth are in today really will affect our community, not just today, but over the course of the next few years. So how can we help them mature and grow and understand their value and their purpose and their potential from where they are now? And, you know, how long will it take to kind of catch them up? We can't just throw all this information on them and say, okay, now you know, so we don't want you to be acting like 7th graders anymore. We expect you to be acting like 9th graders, because they don't know what that is. They've not had the experience. And as you saw in each of those definitions, it's through life experience that maturity comes. And in a lot of areas and a lot of ways, our kids missed a good 1.5 or 2 years of life experiences that what we would consider normal. So, you know, how do we help them grow and catch up? What kind of experiences can we offer them? What kind of information can we provide? And I think that helps us transition into the idea of emotional literacy and the language that they need to be able to have some of these conversations. So that's where we're going to go to at this point, unless there are questions or additional comments. I don't want to leave anybody hanging. Anything? Okay. We're going to then go ahead and move into some conversation around emotional literacy. Emotional literacy is the ability to identify, understand, and respond to the emotion in oneself and in others in a healthy way. And I think it's important that we recognize that it's not only our own inner conversation, but the language that we use in relating to others. And we'll have a lot more to say about that. So how do we go about teaching this idea of emotional literacy? One of the things is that we need to use and teach clear and specific wording. How do we identify and name what we're feeling? What we know when we talk with the average teenager prior to these conversations is that their vocabulary around how they feel or what they think is very small. They're either fine, whatever that means, fine, right? How are you today? I'm fine. What does that mean, really? How do you identify fine? Or when we're at Lake County Juvenile Detention, we get a lot of kids who say, well, I'm pissed. Well, what does that mean exactly? Are you disappointed? Are you discouraged? Are you frustrated? Are you angry? What does pissed mean? What is that definition of that word? Use some other language, put it in sentences. And we're going to have an opportunity to do a little bit of that here in a little bit. How do we help students to become comfortable talking about their emotions, how they're feeling, what they're thinking? How do we assure them that they're in a safe space? And that's so important. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? We know that when students and adults are emotional literate, that they have greater empathy. They're able to engage in healthier and stronger relationships, stronger bonds are formed. They're more able to relate with empathy and sympathy. Easier to put yourself in another's shoes if that person is really able to describe what they're going through, what they're feeling, what they're experiencing. And for us to be able to do that, we have to engage in active listening. And, we've had some conversation about communication in some of our other webinars. And I think healthy communication is one of our lunch tables coming up in a couple months. So we'll get into what does it really mean to be an active listener? Are you paying attention to what's being said and giving them full attention? Or are you glancing up at them from time to time while you're texting or scrolling through your social media on your phone? I think all of us, youth and adults alike, have become very guilty of not being active listeners and giving full attention. So looking face to face, making eye contact, your body language, are you looking down or looking off, or are you doing something else? Or are you leaning in and engaging and really paying attention to what is being said? Look for I statements and share I statements. I feel, I think, I am, I would rather, things like that are really important. And if we can exemplify that to our youth, to anyone really, while we're talking and building relationship, then they learn that way of communicating. So often we're like, well, you make me feel, or when you did this, to be able to say, I felt, fill in the blank. I heard, fill in the blank. So using I statements is really important. And then really being able to express your feelings. How do you feel? Do you have the words? And we're going to do an activity here in just a little bit about the words. How do you use the right words when you're talking to students and you're teaching them to have the conversation? So we're going to do this activity. This is super fun to do in person. For one thing, you get Skittles, which you get to eat at the end of the activity. So unfortunately, no Skittles for you all today because I couldn't mail them all to you. But we're going to do this activity. We call it the Skittles activity. And this is going to be our breakout time in our rooms. So we're going to take a quick 5-minute break, let you guys do a fluid level exchange, get yourself something to drink, use the restroom, grab your lunch if it's your lunchtime and you're going to eat lunch while we go through this activity. When you come back, I will have divided you guys into some breakout rooms. And before I give you the breakout rooms, I'll give some instructions and then I'll send you to breakout rooms. So hopefully we're going to have some great conversations here in a little while. So 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and start our activity. Welcome back. So we didn't have every color represented, but we're going to just kind of process this a little bit. It looks like we got somebody getting some feedback. So if you're not speaking, go ahead and mute. Perfect. We're going to start with the red room. No matter how hard I try to get organized, it never works. Okay, we're going to start with the red room. That was Dan, Courtney, and Emily. So who wants to go first and share some words that you used in telling your story?
I'll go. I used, since we were mad, I used frustrated and I don't get it. And as a foster parent, and if anyone else is just a general parent too, that understand that there can be a lot of anger and then you're just frustrated and I just don't understand.
Perfect. So how about you, Courtney? You want to go next?
Yeah, the words I used were why and I don't know, and frustrated, don't get it.
How about you, Dan?
I use about the same words with the, except with like, I want to punch something, because there's times when things do get frustrating and you don't know how to speak. It's just hard to communicate what you're trying to be frustrated about. So you just do action instead of actually calmly explaining yourself of why you're angry and stuff. But that's about it.
That's good. So that's one of the conversations, especially when we work with the kids in our most needed areas, those that are coming from communities that are extremely poor, or from our kids that are at Lake County Juvenile Detention Center. Dan, you're right. They can't use words. They can't identify. They don't have a circle in front of them when they're in the middle of whatever's happening, right? And acting out seems to be their go-to. So how can we teach kids? That's where anger management comes in. How do we teach them to have the conversation and to process either independently or with someone else, using words, really working through and learning that anger management skills? That's so important. So good. Let's go with the blue room. Angel Corey.
I had I think I had disappointed and bored and not interested.
Are those words that you think regularly used in conversation?
Oh, bored is always used in conversation. Or I just don't want to do that. I don't like it. That one's not really on there. That I don't like it, but it's kind of the same as not interested. So just like, I don't want to. I don't like it. I'm bored.
Corey, how about you? What kind of words did you use?
Well, I used a story. I honestly use those words a lot, but we had a speaker who was really great with our classes. And I was so disappointed when she wasn't going to be able to come back and teach with us. And I really miss teaching with her a lot. So that's the context I used with those words.
Okay. So yeah, there's people in our life who use a lot of blue words, kind of like Debbie Downers. You just know when you ask them how they're doing, some of those words are going to come out. They're bored, they're tired, they're whatever. And, how can we help them? First of all, recognize that they have more going on in their life and help them recognize the positive and encourage them to use some of those positive words. I think when we have kids that we work with on a regular basis, if we can put them in a room and just almost force them to look at like the yellow happy words, right? Like, let's talk about some positive things. What's going on in your life? Sometimes they just miss it because they're not forced to really look at it. So perfect. Let's take a look. Let's see. Our next room was the yellow room. Speaking of which, Jamia and Lexi. Jamia, I did it again. Jamia and Lexi.
Okay, Lexi she doesn't have audio, so she may be in the chat.
Oh, okay.
The
That
yellow
probably made it
words.
difficult, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
It's okay. The yellow words I used all of these before, but the main one, the story that I told, is that I felt snuggly when, like, after I had my kids, like, you get that snuggly feeling because they're all cuddly. And love when I got married, calm. So yes, I've used all of those words before.
Perfect.
And I see she put it into the chat.
Yeah, her best friend just got married, so there was a lot of love in the air, a lot of love in the room. So I'm sure it made it a little bit difficult. So let's use you two as a really great example, because here we have kids who we've been talking about throughout this conversation today. This is their life, right? everything's been for a year and a half, everything happened online through Zoom, through Google Classroom. And what about the kid who can't even turn on a camera or can't have conversation other than through chat? How difficult must that have been for them, right? We can see, Lexi, how did it feel to not be able to have the conversation? Can you just stick it in the chat, some words that you were feeling? And Jamia, how did it feel to not be able to hear her voice?
It was kind of awkward.
Yeah, kind of difficult, right? It was probably frustrating for both of you, disappointing maybe, if it's somebody you really wanted to talk to and you couldn't. And these are all the things that our kids have been dealing with, because, you know, it would be great to think that all of our kids have an iPhone or an Android of some kind that's new and improved and has all the bells and whistles, or that they're all one-on-one on their devices and have Chromebooks that they get to take home with them. But I know for our kids in some of our schools, that's not the case. They don't all have one-on-one devices. And it was very difficult for them during that time to interact with their teachers, with their peers. The socialization was a real problem. Let's go to our last room. That was the orange room. And we had Dwayne and Mike and Rebecca. Who wants to share? Go ahead, Dwayne. You always have something to say. Unmute yourself.
So I used Excited, Like Myself, and Silly. I don't really use Silly a whole lot, but the story that I told was from my 8th grade year, when I kind of found my thing, which kind of made me like myself a whole lot more, built my confidence. But there was a classmate that I didn't get too so along with in band class. And when I became the percussion section leader, there was an event that was coming up, and the fact that they had to come to me and ask me with all the enthusiasm in the world, was I drumming, and had the biggest smile on their face, that's when I knew like drumming was my thing. Like if it made somebody I just did not get along with come to me with that much excitement because of what I possessed and my gifts, I'm like, yeah, this is my thing. Like this is my space.
That's awesome. How about you, Emily? Emily works with kids all the time. She represents the a group called Voice at the Tobacco and Education Program.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that. I was tending to our 9-month-old.
Oh, that's okay. She's also a foster mom of the cutest little thing.
She is so precious. I'm sorry, what was your question to me?
I'm just wondering what words you used and how it was to kind of work your way through a conversation using more emotional literacy words.
It was awesome. And I told Dan and Courtney that I wish I had this wheel when I had our 6-year-old placement, because it was so, she was decent at knowing how she felt, but sometimes it was like, I'm really upset. And I was like, I don't understand what upset means. Can you like help me? How can I help you? And it would have been great if I could have said, like, even in pictures, because she was struggling to read, but say like, how angry are you? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you upset? And then I was telling them there are these books called like, I can't remember what they're called. They're like little spots, and they're all different emotions, and different books go with different emotions. And you can ask them at the end of the day, like, what emotion do you feel? And then you read a story about that emotion. They give you coping mechanisms to deal with it too. So it was like, this kind of like connected all those things for me, which was really cool.
Perfect. How about Rebecca? Anything to add?
It was just interesting to see the wheel and kind of a more youth side of it. I've seen the adult one quite a bit, but I didn't actually realize there was a youth one related to it. So I'm definitely going to be sharing this with my AmeriCorps members that work with the youth to kind of help them along the lines of having conversations when they see a kid is kind of either acting up or not feeling themselves, kind of helping them walk through kind of why and what can we, like the roots behind some of that.
Yeah, I really like this youth one. And like I said, it may at first glance seem very immature, but I think even for our middle school students who haven't learned to use the language and haven't become comfortable with emotional conversations, it's a really great place to start. And I find that a lot of the adult wheels have so many words on them that it's almost overwhelming. So I think that this is a good place to start when you're teaching the idea of emotional literacy to young people. And I love the colors, and I think that I can see how this could be used even in family situations, you know, just from time to time to have the conversation with your kids. Let them pick a Skittle, talk about a time that they felt one of those things, and then they get to eat their Skittles. And then for parents to share those same things, you know, hey, I got a red one, and I can remember a time when I was really angry because this happened and I felt this and I felt that. I think it's important that youth interact with adults and that they are comfortable having those exchanges together. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and kind of pick up where we left off here. We're almost done with our time together. Turn my note page. So, you know, emotional literates. It's not wanting to move. That's great. All right, here we go. Emotionally literate people are able to communicate well with others and are more likely to experience healthy relationships. Can you see how having conversations using these types of words would build stronger and healthier relationships? Would you all agree? I think Emily put it very well in a very practical example there. Children must be taught to recognize and express their emotions. A lot of these words are words that are not part of everyday language. It's not something that they're going to hear consistently, especially if we have adults who are not comfortable sharing their emotions. You know, we've heard the phrase more is caught than taught, and that's often true. So the earlier and the younger we can start having some of these emotionally comfortable conversations and introducing this kind of language to our youth, the more comfortable they'll be as they get older and start experiencing things that maybe they don't know how to talk about. It'll become something that they're used to and more comfortable. So what I'd like for you to do is just in the chat, where in your lives do you think you can use what you learned today? Just stick it in the chat. So we see that some of you are going to use it in classes that you're teaching. Some of it are going to use it at home. Some of it are going to use it in youth group. That's amazing. Working independently with some of your emotionally independent, you know, emotionally immature students. I could just think that there's a lot of opportunity for the things that we discussed today. And I'm excited to see that you guys think that it's something that you'll be able to use. And do you think it's possible that our children can become the teachers of this kind of language? Can you see how our teaching this in a classroom or to our students that we work with can maybe take it home and use this with their parents or their trusted adults? Yeah, I think it'd be really cool. Like if my kids would have brought this home, or now my grandkids would bring home a copy of the color wheel and to kind of have those conversations, I think it'd be great. And with it, with other children too. I see Corey said, I can see how they can learn this and share it with others. I think peer-to-peer conversations will become much more improved for sure. So I just want to thank you for your time today. I'm going to open it up to questions or comments. Is there anything that you all would like to share with each other? Comments, feedback, questions? You can stick it in the chat or feel free to unmute.
Yeah, where can we find a copy of those 5 parts of the whole person?
So that's part of the information that I will send to you. You'll probably get it Monday or Tuesday of next week. You'll get the 5 parts of the whole person. I'll send that as a PDF file, so the circles will all be on there. If you want the video, I can share the video. And then you'll also get a copy of the color wheel. But again, if you just Google emotional wheel or emotional literacy wheel, there's like, you'll get tons of them, tons and tons of them. So you can pick the one that's going to most meet your needs. And like I said, it's a great thing to do with, divide kids up into small groups, give everybody their own individual packet of Skittles. They get to eat them when they're done. That's always a win. So, but yeah, we'll send you with the email, there'll be a link for the recording, there'll be a link for the survey, and you'll get the attachment with the color wheel and the PDF files for the whole person health. That is a copyrighted curriculum, but in my sending it to you, I'm giving you permission to use. Thanks, Mike. Anything else? Well, I'm glad you all could join us today. Not nearly the crowd I was expecting. Hopefully you found your time valuable and got some resources that you can use, tools for your toolbox. You all have a really blessed Thanksgiving. Hope you're spending it with family and friends. I'm thankful for you and the work that you do. Thank you for caring about the youth that we serve. You all have a blessed day. Bye-bye.